Brothers and sisters, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus departed from there and came to his native place, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished. They said, "Where did this man get all this? What kind of wisdom has been given him? What mighty deeds are wrought by his hands? Is he not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his native place, and among his own kin, and in his own house." So he was not able to perform any mighty deed there, apart from curing a few sick people by laying his hands on them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good afternoon. As you know, I'm Father Tom Mahoney, and I'm about as new a priest as a new priest can get. I was ordained on June the 6th of this year, and I grew up in Western New York. I grew up actually in Depew, or as we like to say, Depew. I'm a Western New York boy. I went to Niagara University. I graduated with a degree in accounting, and I worked in accounting for a number of years, and then felt God calling me to serve him and his church. And so I sold my house, sold my car, and entered Christ the King Seminary in 2009. And 7 years later of formation, they ordained me a priest. So here I am, the bishop. Thank you very much. And the bishop, in his wisdom, as the bishop always has wisdom, decided to send me to St. Greg's, and I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to journeying with all of you in faith and love of Jesus Christ and just being a part of this parish community. I've been here since Monday, and it's really been amazing, so thank you very much. Today's readings are really kind of, I think the theme is, God uses weakness to show power. As Paul so beautifully stated in that second reading, power is made perfect in weakness. And he also said, "When I am weak, then I am strong." It's amazing. The power of God begins to work through us when we realize that we're not alone. God is with us in everything. No matter what situation you find yourself, God is right there with you. St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Society of Jesus, or as we know them, the Jesuits, wrote this: "Act as if everything depended upon you, and trust as if everything depended upon God." In our first reading, we hear the calling of the prophet Ezekiel. Now, Ezekiel is an important prophet because he's the first prophet of Israel that was called by God during the exile. And the Israelites were exiled by the Babylonian Empire. They came in and conquered the kingdom of Judah and Israel. And the Babylonians had an interesting way. After they conquered a people, they wouldn't destroy anything, but what they would do was take the leaders and all the elite people of that society and bring them back to Babylonia. And so all the important Israelites were taken out of Israel and brought back to the Babylonian Empire. And the reason they did this was because they felt without leadership, how could the people revolt against them? And they were easier to rule. Now, among these people was Ezekiel. And we hear in our first reading today, God speaking to him and calling the Israelites in exile. And we hear in the first reading this phrase, "Son of Man." And in the Old Testament, this phrase is not so much a title as it is a sign of human weakness. It's really a reference to the mortality of human beings. In a way, God is saying to Ezekiel, I am infinite and you are finite. I am the creator and you are the creature. And thus God is saying to Ezekiel and to us, I am going to use your human weakness to speak to my people. Even if they don't listen to you, they will know that it is me speaking through you to them. Once again, act as if everything depends upon you, and trust as if everything depends upon God. If you've been following along the last couple of Sundays in the Gospels, you will have heard that Jesus was performing some incredibly miraculous deeds. He commands the winds and the seas, he heals a woman, and he raises a 12-year-old girl back to life. But in today, we hear the story of Jesus returning home to Nazareth, and it doesn't go quite the way we'd expect. Usually, when a hero returns to their hometown, there's a big celebration and a big party. You know, it's kind of like when the New York Yankees, the greatest baseball team in the world, wins the World Series, they get a ticker tape parade in Manhattan. Now, as a side note, if the Yankees win the World Series this year, I'm pushing for Father Leon to let me have some vacation and go to New York. So mention that to him if you see him. But that doesn't happen to Jesus. Instead, his hometown questions his authority. They know him too well. They know him before he began his public ministry. They know him as the little boy growing up in Nazareth. They cannot see where all this wisdom and power is coming from. They lack faith because they think they know better. They let their knowledge get in the way of trusting God. Whereas in last week, the woman and the synagogue official completely trusted in God, and Jesus was able to work through them. But in Nazareth, because of their lack of faith, we hear in today's gospel, Jesus was not able to perform any mighty deeds there. It would seem that in some way, God relies on us, works through us, needs us for his power to work in the world. How can this be? The all-powerful God needs human beings in all their weakness to be effective? Really? Doesn't that seem kind of scandalous to you? But that's the whole point of our readings today. For power is made perfect in weakness. God could fix all the problems in the world in one instance, and most of us would probably like that. It would make things easier, or at least we think it would make things easier. But God, who is love, God wants love. God wants love to be freely received and freely given. And so he has a plan. And his plan is to become weak so that we might work through us. God gave up all the glory and power of heaven to become a human being. Jesus, the Word made flesh, suffered a humiliating death of the lowest criminals to break the bonds of sin and death. God became weak so that we could freely embrace the power of love and be freed from sin and death. So Jesus, at the Last Supper, leaves us a memorial of this one great act of love. And we come here today in a great act of fidelity to respond to that love. Let us trust that God's grace is sufficient for today. Remember that God's grace today is enough for you to help you get through that day. And remember, act as if everything depended upon you, and trust as if everything depended upon God.